But I think now it's becoming a bigger threat to the NCAA and the conferences because you've seen teams like Mississippi, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, both boycotted practices this week. And you don't know what these players are thinking in terms of if it's in the back of their mind to potentially boycott games. Like, imagine University of Alabama football players, like, with fans in the stadium, like, getting ready to kick off and then just walking off the field. Like, that would be absolutely ridiculous.
Be astounding.
And like that's going to be like one of the first times there's fans, and in an area like, if you look at the demographic of a lot of these schools that are playing football, a lot of them, just are conservative. A lot of them are Trump supporters. So that would really, really open their eyes and be like, okay, I'm not getting my fix of SEC football now. Like, something's going on. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if that's gonna. Do you see there being a chance of players boycotting a game? Because we've seen it in practice already, especially in the past day or two.
Yeah. I think it depends on a lot of things. It depends on a lot of factors. It depends on sort of what this looks like when the season starts. But I think players will absolutely speak up. We've seen it. We've seen it in professional sports leagues. We've seen it in college football. The We Are United movement in the Pac-12, the We Want to Play movement. We've seen people stretch across conferences, across sports to make statements, to create a movement. That they're empowered. The players know that they're the reason the sport exists, and they know they have a voice. I absolutely think maybe not boycott at first, but I do think there will be statements. The reason I actually believe there could be a boycott is if there are larger coronavirus outbreaks. We've seen a lot of synergism in college football between players protesting and making statements for their personal health, and mixing that in with desires for change on a social level, for creating change within the Black Lives Matter movement, for using that movement to create change at their institutions. And I think a synergy of those two issues could create things we don't expect. They could create boycotts. I mean, if you're a player and you're putting your life at risk by playing during a pandemic, and you also have a university that's not respecting the Black Lives Matter movement, those are just more reasons to get involved. Those are more reasons to put your voice on the line and to make a difference.
That's absolutely fair. But I feel like the conference most likely to do that is the Pac-12. Like, we saw it with the We Are United movement.
Yeah.
And those players have just proven to be a bit more progressive, at least socially, than some of the players in the other conferences. So if we're talking about football this fall, like, with these social injustice issues at the forefront of society right now, I feel like the Pac-12, had we been playing football this fall, you would see like boycotts and things of games. But I just don't know if players, and this is not a knock against players in other conferences, it just seems like they're like slightly less organized. Like, the Pac-12 We Are United movement has been very well thought out. Like, you can even see it on their social media posts. Like, they're all working as one. It's like a well-oiled machine. Like, they're all kind of like bouncing off of each other with their posts. They all have like similar like wording. They're on the same page. I just don't know if other conferences are organized like that, but you could see it with individual teams too. So
yeah, like you said, teams are boycotting.
Go
ahead. And plenty of these guys are in contact with each other. I know the We Are United movement was working with players from other schools during the pandemic to put together statements that were NCAA wide, that got everyone involved. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that again, especially if, like I said, you have a synergy of issues. If people are really dissatisfied, they'll go out and seek change. And a lot of these guys at ACC schools, a lot of these young men at SEC schools, at Big 12 schools, they're smart. They're young. They're activists. They've made their voices heard in the past. They were really proactive on stepping up and making sure their schools were both saying and trying to do the right thing. And if their schools don't, if these institutions and these conferences don't, I would not be surprised to see them back out there on the front lines.
Yeah, and we've seen like it does not just apply to professional sports. Like we've seen that athletes can make a like an actual difference. A lot of people see these protests, a lot of like the naysayers see these protests and they're like, okay, well, why don't you do something to like actually go and change it? But these NBA boycotts literally caused all NBA arenas to be changed into voting precincts for the election. Like that is physical change that's like come about because of these boycotts. And I think that college athletes hold just as much power to do certain things like that. So
Absolutely.
I would not put it past these teams and these conferences to protest more and protest further and create these actual changes.